Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is paddling Portugal's River of Wine, and it will be presented by our fabulous NatHab expedition leader, Nancy Moore. Nancy, thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure I am not alone when I say I cannot wait to join you, to live vicariously through you in this adventure. It looks amazing, and I've been coveting this trip for a long time now, so hopefully I'll get to join you someday. But we are joined today with a lot of lucky folks who will be probably seeing you on the waters in the next few months to come. So let's dive in. And I just want to apologize for the technical issues, but we're still gonna get all the information and see the beautiful pictures. So thanks for bearing with us. Take it away.
Sure. Thanks so much, Sonny. I really appreciate it. And again, our apologies for technical difficulties here this afternoon. But I want to just say I'm super excited to be here and share more about this trip. It's been my baby for over 20 years, actually. I am, as Sonny just said, I'm Nancy Moore, uh, and um, and unfortunately, because you're not seeing the slideshow view, you're gonna see some things that probably don't belong. But nonetheless, this is me, Nancy Moore, and as I said, I've been doing this trip for over 20 years, and I have fallen totally in love with Portugal in the process, really from the very first trip that I did there, and from this beautiful part of northern Portugal. And part of the reason why I love it is that I'm a professional sea kayaker, uh, and as well as a wine lover and a food lover, a foodie, if you will. And so it checks all my boxes, and I'm confident it'll check everyone else's boxes as well. Most important, um, uh, we have a team in Portugal, and that team we call ourselves the Three Musketeers, or these are my brothers and my brothers from a different mother, and my nephew from a different mother, which is to say, from left to right. That's Vitor, and Vitor actually started this trip a couple of years before I jumped on board. And then, of course, that's me on the next to Vitor, and then Pedro, who's been with us for it'll be 19 years this summer. And then next to Pedro is the newest member of the team, Rodrigo, and Rodrigo is Pedro's son. He's just fantastic. He's a college student, and he's just terrific. Um, Next up, we have a small map of the area that we're paddling in. As you can see, Porto, where we start the trip, is right on the Atlantic to the far left. Um, a lot of people uh, have discovered Porto and discovered Portugal. When we started this trip, I rarely ran into an American in Portugal, and Portugal has been discovered by Americans big time, and Porto is certainly at the top of that list. But this trip we go very far away from Portugal, and you can hopefully see with my cursor. If people leave Porto to go upriver on the Douro, they might go along the Douro, and at the very most, they would get to Pinhao, which is considered the heart of the region. We actually go all the way from Porto past Pinhao and go all the way upriver to Barcadalva and beyond, actually slightly beyond Barcadalva, to what forms the Spanish and Portuguese border between. This is where the Douro continues. When it goes into Spain, it's called the Duero, and in this small area from Barcadalva, going east, that's an international park, and we were fortunate to be able to paddle that in September. We can't paddle it in June because of the nesting of the birds that live up in that area. So we spend all of our time on the Douro in an area where it is very remote and where we have the river all to ourselves. We paddle a total of 5 days. And then we have a break in the middle of the trip to go to another beautiful UNESCO heritage site known as the Koa Archaeological Park. And of course, again, the majority of our time is spent paddling. And as some of you have probably read, I call this my favorite float and bloat, which is to say it's really about the beautiful wine, the beautiful, beautiful valley, which in itself is a UNESCO heritage site. And it's just a fantastic, fantastic time, a fantastic way to see the river and the region. So this is the airport in Porto. It's a beautiful airport. It's not that difficult to find your way around. If you come directly from the United States to this airport, you'll go through customs at the airport first once you get off the plane. There's not likely to be long lines. And then once you get through customs, you'll go to baggage claim, grab your baggage, and then we're not allowed to go into the baggage area, but we will be meeting you right after you go through, grab your luggage. You'll see exit signs, and you'll see there's a meet and greet area, and we'll be there smiling, waiting for you, help you take your luggage, and take you to our home away from home. Our first home away from home in Porto, in Fonte Sagres. Again, very easy airport to navigate. And it's only about a 20-minute drive from the airport to the hotel. If you come by train, and I should say, if you come from some other portion, if you come early or if you come from some other part of Europe first, you fly through Madrid or you fly through London, you'll do your customs check there. The same thing applies, which is to say you'll grab your luggage and you'll see us with a sign with your name on it, waiting for you, excited to see you at the airport. And the same thing applies. This is the train station. This is Campanha. If you fly into Lisbon or you go somewhere else in Portugal before coming to Porto, you'll most likely take the train into this beautiful station, Campanha. High-speed trains come into this station, and you'll go up an escalator. Once you exit the train, you'll go up the escalator, and you'll see us there waiting for you with a sign, again, NatHab sign with your name on it. So we promise we won't miss you. This is even closer to the hotel. This is about 10 minutes from the hotel. This is the first hotel in Fonte Sagres, and this is my third brother from a different mother. His name is Jose, and he's the head bellman at Infante Sagres, and he has been the head bellman there for 32 years. He's warm and welcoming, and as is the whole hotel staff. And he'll very much welcome you and be glad to take your luggage when we pull up in the van. This is just a few shots of Porto. Again, I apologize for the writing in the background, given our technical difficulties today. But this is this lower left, you have the city center, which in itself is a UNESCO heritage site. And then on the right, you see the beautiful river with Porto in the background and the bridge. And these boats that you see here are called barca rebellas. And those are the traditional boats that were used to carry the pipes or casks of wine downriver when it was a wildly rapid, crazy river. Porto, I would totally encourage people to come into Porto early. It's a stunning city architecturally. It's got fantastic food, beautiful markets, um, uh, architecture of through the ages, many architecture, beautiful buildings for the ages. Uh, and that's where we'll, of course, have our opening dinner and our tour, our private tour and tasting at Coburn's, and then the welcoming dinner at Vinum, which is a beautiful, beautiful restaurant in that overlooks the river on the other side of the river in Villanova de. Now, this is very different trip than the rest of NatHab's offerings. And it's very different in that this isn't about the wildlife. It's really about immersing yourself in the old world, beautiful culture of this part of Portugal. And of course, a big part of that old world culture that we're going to experience is not only the beautiful agricultural banks and beauty of the Douro River, but the wine and port that comes from off of those banks, and all of the beautiful food as well, which is why we call it the float and bloat. This is just some appetizers at one of our dinners when we're upriver, just to give you a taste. I can tell you that that many individuals have asked us to put together a cookbook as a result of our cuisine that we taste all week long, and the wines that we're drinking all week long as well, not just the port. It's this whole trip is really about food. Apologies. Um, it's about food. It's about um, it's about family, and it's about wine. There's another picture of a beautiful breakfast setting at Casa de Rio, one of the places that we stay. Um, and then uh, once we have our time in Porto, which includes that tour and tasting, it's time to head upriver. And we choose to head upriver using this train, this local train, goes from a different station. So we'll head out from our hotel walking, leaving all of our luggage behind, which goes into the vans. And so all we need is a day pack, and we'll head upriver in this train, which in and of itself is an experience. This train and the tracks of the train go all along the river the entire way. So it's one of the reasons why we choose to use the train rather than going up by van itself. This is the van. This is a Mercedes van. It's of what we use here. We have two of them. They're brand new, and they seat with the two vans and the kayaks attached to the rear of the vans. We're good to go. They're very comfortable. Of course, air conditioned with great sight lines. And each van holds 7 people very comfortably. And we use the vans every single day to get from our accommodations down to the river and back up at the end of the day with paddling. So before I go too much further, I want to talk a little bit about the food, which is to say that, as I mentioned, the food and the wine is very much a part of this trip. If you haven't completed your dietary preferences already, or for some reason those preferences change for any reason, really encourage people to make sure that that's accurate and to let NatHab know what those dietary preferences are. When we're close to the Atlantic, we of course are mostly eating fish is very much part of our menu. as we move upriver, we do as the Portuguese do upriver, which is to say, our cuisine tends to be more pork and lamb and beef related, but we make adjustments for all kinds of diets, and we're happy to do so. The sooner that we know about your diet and your dietary preferences and your dietary concerns, absolutely the better. Since we've moved upriver, and I talked briefly about the luggage or the trip up and the luggage going in the back of the vans, I know that we said in the pre-departure briefing that we prefer soft side luggage. That would absolutely be the case. We would also encourage, but if you have hard shell luggage, that's perfectly okay. It all goes in the back of the vans. We load it in and out of the vans on a daily basis. We would strongly encourage you to also have a day pack, of course, and not only for instance, going upriver in that train, but also we actually use it for a change of clothes later on in the trip as we're moving our way downriver in the kayaks. This is just a view as the river unfolds in the train. You can see the train track on the left there, and the train is actually on the other side of the river on the picture on the right. And you can see those beautiful terraces and olive trees and almond trees on the side of the river as we go up on the train. Another view from, again, the view from the river, you can see it's very mountainous, and those terraces are at various grades, and it's a gorgeous trip all the way up in a gorgeous valley. This is once we get up to our location, our first night upriver. You can see it's quite a change from Porto. This is actually two pictures from Felgar, our first home away from home, where Casa Santa Cruz is located. And as I said, this is really all about the immersion into old world Portugal, and these pictures certainly typify that. And this picture does as well. This is all of those terraces are so steep and so narrow that all the grapes need to be picked by hand. So you'll see during harvest season, which is in September, those vines will be green and gorgeously ripe with grapes. In June, while it's not harvest season, all of the vines are screaming with growth and green, luscious beauty, with farm workers, quinta workers being out pruning at the beginning of the season, as opposed to picking at the end of the season. Another thing that you're apt to see in September would be, or we hope to see in September, would be, again, the old world tradition of stomping grapes in the big old granite lagars, where the grapes go after they're picked for the harvest. So again, the difference between June and September, it's really a couple of things. In June, the mountains of the Douro Valley are gorgeously green and lush with flowers. Beautiful mountain flowers, foxglove, all kinds of absolutely gorgeous wildflowers. In September, when we're in harvest season, much of the green has gone away, and because it hasn't rained for a couple of months, so it's more brown. And of course, we're picking those grapes, and we're also, when we're in harvest season for grapes, we're also in harvest season for olives, or not for olives, but for almonds, and for figs and for and for citrus. So it's a very lush, heavy agricultural area. So this picture I decided on because this is a good time to talk about your clothing and the kinds of clothing. First and foremost, you want your clothing for on the river to be quick dry. You see lots of quick dry clothing here. Uh, and you're going to want to dress in layers. You see all kinds of layers here. You have bathing suits and then a simple long sleeve top over your bathing suit, or on the top to keep the sun and give you sun protection. Uh, and then you might have sun cover, like more of a shell. Certainly sun cover in terms of your hat, a good hat to make sure that your head doesn't get burnt, and that your face is protected from the sun. Good water shoes. You see a couple of people here barefoot on the very shore, but we always wear good water shoes when we're on the river and in the kayaks. Um, and then you always we always want to carry rain gear too. You see that there's one woman that has sort of rain gear looking like pants on, the yellow pants there, and we certainly encourage you to have rain gear too. We can get rain occasionally, although it's rare this time of year, and but it can get windy, and so the rain gear is also a nice nice break from the wind. On the river, you're not carrying your luggage. We carry our luggage in the vans, but you will have dry bags that we provide, and you'll want to bring a carabiner to clip in your any kind of personal gear you put in that dry bag. And you also would want to have something like croquis to make sure that you hang on to your glasses or your sunglasses and you don't lose them in any way overboard. We don't expect anybody to go overboard, at least not unintentionally. But to be on the safe side, we always want to make sure that everything is clipped into your kayaks. And I couldn't be more excited to let everybody know that we have brand new kayaks this year. For those of you that are coming on board this year, and they're just fantastic boats for exactly what we're doing, paddling on a beautiful, largely placid river, although it can occasionally get windy. So on the river, that's a little bit what we look like and the gear that we have on board. When we're off the river and we're enjoying dinner at night, we want to follow Portuguese custom, which is to say we dress up a little bit. Doesn't have to be super fancy. You can still be in quick dry. But you see many of the women here have some sort of a scarf on. I'm wearing a little bit dressier jacket instead of my NatHab shirt. Again, this is very much of a Portuguese tradition to dress up for meals and to get out of your wet gear. And just as important, besides your wet shoes, your paddling shoes with good soles, we recommend that people bring just another pair of shoes, whether it's sneakers or a pair of dress-up shoes for not only evening, for your evening attire, but also for the walks that we'll take on this trip as well. Some people, if they're for paddling shoes, like myself, some people use Keens. There's other brands like Tevas or Solomon that also have good shoes for paddling, and we want to make sure the paddling shoes have good soles, and some of them can double up as your evening shoes as well. But if you want to get out of wet shoes and you want to give your feet a break, it's always a good idea to have an extra pair of shoes. You do not need heavy hiking boots or anything like that. Um, and and we're all of the places that we stay, we're the only people. We are family for all of the locations that we stay upriver, and it's very rare for us to share our accommodations with any other guest while we're there. But we're still guests, and so again, we like to dress up a little bit for dinner. So now that we've talked a little bit about our clothing and arrival, let's talk a little bit about the paddling and what can you expect. This is a beautiful picture of the Douro River, and more specifically, the International Park that forms the border between Spain and Portugal. So we're up high, obviously, off the river here, standing on the bank on the Portuguese side, and the little teeny town you see across the river is actually Spain. So the river is forming the border all the way down to Barcadolva. So beautiful paddle, and again, this is part of the paddle in September, and in June, we're not able to paddle the International Park, but we have another segment of the river. Each segment of the river that we paddle is very different, and we have another segment that is an absolute favorite of mine, that I know you'll all enjoy too. And we can't paddle the International during June because of the beautiful birds that are nesting up in this area, and we don't want to disturb them in nesting season. So you can see that the river here is very flat and it's largely calm, and and here's a picture that's even glass-like, right? Another picture on the river. At one time it was a wildly rapid river, but because this river it has several dams in it, there's actually 5 dams on the Portuguese side of the river, Portuguese end of the river, I should say. It's not only flat, but there's largely no current. So it's very easy to paddle. It's like paddling 5 lakes or 4 lakes as opposed to a river, because there's little to no current on that river. We can get wind. If we get wind, it'll be in our face, but again, it's generally comfortable paddling. And we have the river, because we've moved so far east, we have the river totally to ourselves, with one exception, and that is there are some larger river boats, cruise boats, like the Norway cruise lines, Norwegian cruise lines, Viking cruise lines, if you will, has boats, as do several other tour operators. But we'll see like 1 or 2 of those a day that goes by us, and otherwise it's perfectly peaceful and quiet and beautifully placid. We provide the brand new kayaks that I talked about, fantastic paddles, dry bags, and of course PFDs or life jackets. And again, you're packing only what you need to pack on the river. Perhaps most important, for some of you, again, I apologize for the pictures the way they are, but there's 2 more pictures. You can see the picture on the left. We're paddling through some amazing gorge, and the paddle on the right, we're paddling by some absolutely drop-dead gorgeous vineyards. The most important thing about the paddling to know, I think, is that if you're not a paddler, or if you haven't paddled very much, I'm always there, not only on the river and with you, but I'm there to give you instruction and coach you along. We give you instruction the first night when we're in Felgar, and I'll continue to coach and provide instruction to people along the way. It's always so impressive to me how people's paddling abilities really take off over the course of the week, and their comfort in the boats. It's just fantastic. And of course, safety is priority number one. So the instruction that I provide in the very beginning of the trip, we'll be going over safety, and every single morning before we get on the river, as we get on the river, we'll go over our safety signals and protocols all over again. The paddles that we do are anywhere from 3 to 5 hours over the course of the day, and of course that includes breaks, the 3 to 5 hours. So we always take a break, sometimes on the water, sometimes off the water, but we always take breaks along the way. So it's not overly strenuous paddling, but it is, as is advertised, it's important to physically be comfortable. If you get a chance to try kayaking before you come, if you're not an experienced kayaker, that's always helpful. And otherwise, just be open and game to learning this new fantastic sport. I've been a passionate paddler for over 30 years, an instructor for 30 years as well, and I'm always excited to teach people. This gives you an idea of what it looks like off the river when we're walking. It's more walking than hiking. Certainly there's some grade, but we're generally walking on dirt roads through vineyards or pathways through vineyards, and it's not strenuous walks. If you're somebody that uses walking sticks or would feel more comfortable with walking sticks, I'd certainly encourage you to bring them again. But it's not treacherous terrain. As you can see here, there's some grade, but it's pretty dry and comfortable walking. And as we walk, of course, we're seeing more of the vineyards, more of the olive trees. And then when we're on the river, we get to experience some of the beautiful produce that's available too. This is our group picking oranges off of an orange tree. Other things to think about on the river would include your binoculars, of course. If you have a camera that you'd like to bring on the river, I would encourage you to either bring your own otter box or pelican box. If you have a camera and you've ever done anything that might suggest rain, you probably have one of those already. But if you so an otter box or a pelican box or a dry bag, your own dry bag for that camera. Again, we want to make sure everything in the kayaks are protected, even though you're going to stay upright, even though you're going to be enjoying the paddle all the way down. And while our dry bags are good for a layer that you might bring on the river, we would appreciate it if you brought your own dry bag if you have special camera equipment. Phones work fantastic. I bring my phone on the river, and I always have it protected and waterproofed as well. As I said before, we take a break midweek from the paddling and shift gears to go into what is the Koa Archaeological Park, the third UNESCO Heritage Site that we visit while we're on this trip. This is a picture of the museum looking down to the river, as well as a picture of one of the rocks out in the wild. So we spend the day first visiting the museum, learning all about the beautiful Paleolithic etchings that exist, thousands of them in this valley, some of the oldest archaeological etchings on the entire planet. And they're open, they're under the sun, they're not in a cave, they're not painted, they're actually etched into the schist rock. So after we visit the museum and have a beautiful lunch there, we actually go out and see the etched rocks in the wild. We walk out with guides to show us a sampling of the thousands that exist in the wild. So, as I said, this is not a wildlife trip. You're the wildlife, but we will see some wildlife there. Most often, what we see, these guys right here. This is the griffin vulture, or the grifo. It's a massive vulture that finds its home in the Douro, in part because of the beautiful mountains and cliffs that exist in the Douro, where they nest, and the thermals, they need the thermals off of those cliffs to actually get their heavy bodies off the ground. They have a wingspan of over 11 feet. So even with those big, beautiful wings, they need those thermals. They're late sleepers. They wait for the sun so that the heat and the thermals can lift them off the cliffs where they live. Another vulture that we see there is the Egyptian vulture, less common than the grifo, but nonetheless makes the Douro home. And then we also will see a fair number of eagles. This is a golden eagle here that you see here. So we'll see mostly birds. A lot of the other animals that exist in the Douro, there's quite an extensive wildlife list that I put together in the pre-departure book. Are smaller animals that are just too difficult to spy in the wild. So and that call the Douro home. So, but we do anticipate seeing some wildlife, and of course, the other animals that we see would be the animals at the places where we stay. Each one of the places that we stay. Or I should say, all but one of the places that we stay have animals, have pets that are part of the establishments. This is Bebokish, there's the kitty cat on the left. When Bebokish was only 8 weeks old in the little basket there, and now is an adult cat, very friendly. Part of the family that welcomes us there. And then the other kitty cat that you see here is Enish. And here's a couple of the dogs. The one on the left is Franca, and he's a family member at Casa do Rio. He's also a purebred Portuguese breed known as Serra Estrela. Named after the largest mountain in Portugal, and they're actually bred to be sheepdogs. He's not. He's just a big oaf laying around Casa do Rio because it's such a cool place. And then the other dog on the right here is Kika, and she's a real sweetheart and belongs to Lenore and Miguel Cabral of Quinta dos Mos. So if you're missing your pets from home, know that you'll have plenty of TLC sent your way from our friends in the accommodations. So finally, to our accommodations. Our accommodations upriver are stunning. Each one of them. They are selected in part for their stories. Each one has its own story to tell, its own architecture. Its own comfort, and certainly they're selected for their comfort. This is a beautiful picture of the inside private pool of Casa Santa Cruz. They're selected for their size. They're also selected for their size. Each one of the places that we stay at is small enough so that we're the only people staying when we're there. And most importantly, They're chosen because they're selected because they're welcoming us as family. We are family. Natural Habitat and all of Natural Habitat guests are welcomed as family. And as you'll see, they're just so warm and welcoming. The staff, the owners, so warm and welcoming. This is, as I said, Casa Santa Cruz. This is Casa de Rio, and some of the clients climbing up or walking up, if you will, to Casa de Rio. This is a stunning and newest casa, of course, embedded in this beautiful vineyard. And that little valley that you see that we're walking by that's in front is all gardens and citrus that go into the kitchen to make the absolutely fabulous meals that we have. All of the accommodations that we have pools. All of them have Wi-Fi, although I'd encourage you to stay off your phones and Wi-Fi as much as possible. They all, of course, these are all fantastic accommodations. They have hair dryers, they have hair products, soap, etc. So, and as I said, each one of them has their own story to tell, and I can't wait to share the story with you. So this is, again, Casa de Rio. This is the pool at Casa de Rio, again, right, embedded into the vineyards. And this is a great shot, I think, showing the pool looking down at the river. And as I said, the only things we ever see or share the river with is the cruise boats, and that's us kind of thumbing our nose at the cruise boat going by. I'm sure they're having a lovely time, but I think our crew is having a better time in the pool at Casa de Rio. And this is Barrio do Casal. Again, beautiful story. Old schist houses that have been transformed into their own little cabins with a beautiful pool in a tiny little town called Mursa. Where, of course, we also have our breakfast and have dinner and cocktails as well. And one final thing before I turn it over for questions, and that is that I just wanted to talk a little bit about money. And that is, of course, we're in Portugal, so we're going to be operating primarily in euros. Those euros are available at the airport. There are also many ATMs in Porto, including spitting distance from the hotel, if you will. There's also establishments, monetary exchange establishments in Porto within walking distance of the hotel, if you prefer not to use an ATM. Credit cards Porto is a very cosmopolitan, happening city. And of course, the majority of establishments in Porto take credit cards. There's a few establishments like Casa de Rio that take credit cards upriver as well. But anything in the museum certainly would take credit cards if you were to buy something in the museum gift shop. But there are opportunities as we travel to purchase port and purchase wine and purchase olive oil or gifts for home where there wouldn't necessarily be a credit card accepted. So we encourage people to take a little bit of money upriver. If for some reason you find something you can't live without and you're low on euros as we go upriver, we can certainly lend you and have lent clients funds. You can pay us back when we get back to Porto, but it's always a good idea to have a little bit of money upriver. And as it relates to money and that shopping upriver, I'll just say that we have packing down to a science as it relates to bringing wine and olive oil and port and anything else that might be fragile back in your luggage back to the United States or whatever country you're from. My personal record is bringing 20 bottles of wine and port and olive oil back. Just goes to show you how much I love it. And I will say that while the most of my friends are foodies and wine lovers and port lovers, they always say to me, don't bring us the wine, bring us the olive oil. And the wineries that we visit, our friends upriver that we visit are boutique wineries that can't ship back to the United States. Again, in Porto you can ship, but upriver you can't. With that, I will open it up for questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Nancy, thank you so much. This trip was already on my short list, and it might have moved up a couple spots. It looks so fabulous, and I just love the combination of the float and the bloat.
Well, I hope you know, Sunny, that several of your colleagues have come twice already.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
It's my turn.
Yeah. Put it on the list.
Well, before we start the Q&A, I just want to remind everybody they can submit their questions via the questions field in the control panel. Can you talk a little bit more about the climate differences in June and September?
Absolutely, and about the climate overall. So first of all, I would say a couple of things. One is the climate in Portugal, I mean, the climate in Porto is very, very different than the climate upriver. So in Porto, if you've been tracking, for those of you that might be tracking the weather reports from Porto, when it's 70, it can easily be 15 degrees. 15 degrees, sorry. Of course, my water softener here in Wisconsin went off. My apologies. In Porto, in June and September, it's always going to be on the cool side, of course, because we're on the Atlantic, right? So it's not unusual in Porto to have 75 degrees in Porto, and sometimes damp again because of the Atlantic. But one of the things that makes the Douro so special for wine, and for all the beautiful Mediterranean crops that are grown here, is that it's a petri dish of heat. So in June and in September, you can count on the temperatures in the Douro being more like in the 80s most of the days. It's one of the reasons why we encourage swimming in the river, and it's why every establishment has a pool. Sometimes it can get up into the 90s. Almost always sunny, both in June and in September. It's in Portugal. They say that in the Douro Valley, and in this part of northern Portugal, they have 9 months of winter and 3 months of hell from that heat. And I would not say that it's hell at all. It's very comfortable because we're on the river, but it's part of the reason why we don't paddle, frankly, in July, is because the heat in July and early August can be pretty challenging. So I hope that helps.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
One of our guests is saying that they're planning to come in a day early and stay at the recommended hotel. Will the
Yes.
initial pickup be there?
Great question. Yes. So if you have booked to come in early, you're absolutely, and you're staying in Infante Sagres, we absolutely will pick you up at the airport. And if I'm not there, because we're still upriver, with a different departure, we have somebody else come and pick you up at this. They'll have the NatHab sign, and they'll have your name. So again, in that meet and greet area, by all means, look for that pickup. And and if you're coming in early and you're staying somewhere else, then you should make your own arrangements to get to Infante Sagres before we start on the first day.
Sounds good. Can you comment on tipping in general?
I would encourage people to read the tipping section of the pre-departure book that you receive for the trip. There's an extensive write-up in the book about tipping and the way Natural Habitat handles tipping. And new this year for the first time on this trip, certainly, and I think the majority of trips, you'll be able to tip by using your credit card. Um, uh, and all of that is going to be spelled out in it's just being updated within the last month or two in your pre-departure booklet.
Hmm.
Most of I should say, I'll just add, Sunny, that most of it takes a village to put this trip on, and this village is definitely family. But most of the people that we work with upriver and that help us along on the way in the river are taken care of on the trip, and that's again all spelled out in your pre-departure booklet.
Great. Thank you so much. Um, Regarding departure day, how is the train to Lisbon with regards to luggage? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so you would take the same train station, Campagna, that I showed at the beginning of the slides, to go back to Lisbon, and there's, I think there's trains almost every hour. Most of them being high-speed trains through beautiful countryside. Can't recommend that train enough. It's super comfortable. It has Wi-Fi and huge windows. Like I said, I think it goes just about every hour out of that train station. We would, just as we deliver everybody back to the airport, if you're flying out, if you're taking the train south to Lisbon or taking the train elsewhere from Porto, we would deliver you back to the train station. And the train station has it's very easy to get your luggage on and off the train. And there's in each of the cars, there's places to stow your luggage in the car, very close to where you would sit on the train.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, thank you again. That is the last question we have today. So I'll hand it back to you for closing comments.
Well, again, I just want to thank everybody for being here today and for listening. And I'm sorry that we had some technical difficulties, but I hope that you got a flavor and it got you more excited to join us on this beautiful trip. It's as I said, I have fallen in love with Portugal. I've actually thought more than once about buying property over in Portugal, as have a lot of Americans these days. And this valley in particular is so very special, and I'm glad to be able to share more about the trip and look forward to seeing you all
Hmm.
in the fall.
Well, thank you again for sharing this amazing itinerary with us. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And again, thank you for your patience with the technical issues. Please join us again tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.